Hello and welcome to Breakfast for Pancakes. I'm your host, PK Sullivan. Today, it's all about grilled cheese. Thing is, this is not a recipe video. You all have the recipe already, you know how to make a grilled cheese. Instead, this is about making the ultimate grilled cheese, your perfect grilled cheese. There is no such thing as one perfect grilled cheese. There are many perfect grilled cheeses. I'm not going to be giving you exact ingredients, weights, measures, cooking times, any of that. That's going to depend on the choices you make with the information I'm giving you here today. A perfect grilled cheese has 4 key elements. 1, a crunchy brown crust. 2, tender bread underneath that crust, connected to 3, the melty cheese. And lastly, big cheese flavor. In this video, I'm going to show you how to meet all 4 of those criteria and reach your perfect grilled cheese. Anyone who follows me on Twitter knows that I love grilled cheese. I make it frequently, and I'm very proud of the quality that I'm able to turn out. I've spent a lot of time perfecting my technique, and that's what I want to share with you today. Like I said, grilled cheese is not a recipe. It's a dish, certainly, but I am not going to give you a recipe to follow. Instead, I'm going to walk you through those 4 key elements and show you how to achieve them. Starting on the outside, we have that crispy, crunchy, brown but not burnt crust. How do we achieve that? The brown crust comes from frying the bread. Frying the bread in a griddle requires a sticky fat. I say a sticky fat because butter is spreadable and viscous. At room temperature, it isn't liquid. You can use olive oil or canola oil or a liquid at room temperature fat, but what that's going to do is just soak into the bread a little bit and not really build up enough to really fry it to the crispiness that we're looking for. Some people use mayonnaise. I personally cannot stand mayonnaise. I don't even keep it in the house. Butter works beautifully. At room temperature, it spreads very nicely, gives you an even coating across your bread so that you develop an even browning. As it fries, it will stay in place and crisp up the crust. Your cooking vessel matters. Work with a cast iron pan if you can. Even better is a cast iron griddle. You want a vessel that will stay at a given temperature pretty evenly without developing tons of hot spots. Cast iron is perfect for this. Your choice of bread also matters. You want a bread that has a medium crumb to it. I used the La Brea Tuscan loaf. As you can see, it has air pockets, but it still holds together nicely. The air pockets are important so that the heat will spread through the bread without just burning the bottom. The crumb needs to be dense enough that the butter will spread across it evenly. A good medium crumb that achieves both of those is ideal. Lastly, when you put your sandwich on the griddle, weight it down with something. You don't want to press it enough to compress it. I like to use my chef's presses. I'll use 2 8-ounce presses for 1 pound. That will give it good, solid contact all across the sandwich and just ensure that the brown, crunchy crust is even edge to edge. The next quality of the perfect grilled cheese is a soft, tender interior bread. When the bread is soft, the gooey cheese will sort of start to meld in and basically weld itself to the sandwich. This means your sandwich isn't going to be sliding around or falling apart. It's also a really nice textural contrast. You bite through the crunchy outer layer of the crust, you get the buttery, crumbly crunchiness of it, followed by just tender, soft, pillowy bread. It's a wonderful eating experience. I like to cut my slices about 1/2 inch, and doing so gives us room enough for the crispy brown crust to form while leaving the interior soft and tender and moist. You need to work with fresh bread. It cannot be stale. Again, a medium dense crumb is important here. It's going to have the air pockets that will transfer the heat evenly through the cheese. Quality number 3, melty, ooey, gooey, stretchable, pullable cheese. Melty cheese isn't just a product of the cheese, it's also a product of your cooking temperature. In order to get that melty interior without burning the outside, you need to fry your sandwich at a low heat. You can bake the sandwiches if you're doing them in bulk. My technique is to put them on the griddle and cover the sandwich to trap the heat in to effectively bake it right on the stovetop. The last quality is big flavor. For that, you need a full flavored cheese. This is something typically that will have been aged for a good long while. These cheeses tend to be a little harder and they don't tend to melt as well. Even if they do melt, they will tend to separate and break into an oily, greasy mess. Mixing them with the melting cheese prevents that breakage and will end up with just the smooth, pulling cheese that you're looking for. You can also add in other things to make your grilled cheese sandwich more flavorful. I like to use a bit of mustard, some nice deli style or Dijon mustard, just really complements the cheese well and brings a big piquant flavor. But there are a huge number of different grilled cheese sandwiches out there. Many of them have ham or bacon, tomato slices, nut butters. I personally can't, I have nut allergies, but I've seen a number of places put nut butters in a grilled cheese sandwich for a sort of salty, sweet play against the rich cheese inside. Really, do whatever, experiment, and have fun. Make your perfect grilled cheese. That's what this video is all about. Qualities 3 and 4, the melty cheese and the big cheese flavor, are a dichotomy. Your soft, melty cheeses tend to be young cheeses that have very mild flavors. On the other hand, your big flavored cheeses don't tend to melt very well. The solution here is to make your own cheese blend. You want to have a melty cheese and a big flavored cheese. I'm not going to tell you what kind of cheese to use in your grilled cheese. Again, that's a personal choice. You go with what makes you happy. However, I do firmly believe that you should shred your own cheese. The pre-shredded bags of cheese that you get contain additives to prevent them from clumpy. That affects the way that they melt as well. Why use shredded cheese, you might ask? Well, it's because you want to mix your cheeses together to promote that even melting. If you use slices of cheese, you're going to end up with layers and stratifications of your cheese. They aren't going to mix and blend in the final sandwich the way that they do if you shred them, toss them together, and then build your sandwich with that. So yes, I have strong feelings about how the cheese should be prepared, not necessarily what cheese you use. So to make a cheese blend, actually mix it up, blend it in a bowl. There are all sorts of cheeses in the world. I think you could spend a lifetime dedicated to the study of cheese and not know all of the cheeses that there are. There are so many cheeses. Every culture in the world has its own cheeses and its own cheese tradition. Experiment, find your perfect cheese blend. When making a cheese blend for grilled cheese, I like to use 3 cheeses. I don't like to do more than that because you start losing the individual notes. I'll use a melty cheese, a more aged cheese for flavor, and then a little bit of Parmesan for a nutty, umami, salty kick in the sandwich. The 3 cheeses I use really depends. It changes up based on what I have available, what's in the fridge, and honestly, what I feel like. Today I have 2 melty cheeses, 2 aged cheeses, and some Parmesan. My melty cheeses are Monterey Jack and Munster. My aged cheeses are Gruyere and Cheddar. For Parmesan, you really want to get an imported Parmesan because the Italian aged Parmesan is a nice, hard, nutty cheese. You want a Parmesan that is hard and dense, and when you grate it, just breaks apart and crumbles. That's a good Parmesan. Bit of Munster and Cheddar, Parmesan. Mix up the cheeses. This will keep you from having pockets of cheddar break and turn into a greasy mess. Monterey Jack and Gruyere, and good hit of Parmesan. You know, I do use a lot of butter. You want the butter to really cling to the bread. Grilled cheese is not a healthy dish, sorry. And for this last one, Monterey Jack and Cheddar, last of the Parmesan. And again, exact ratios are going to differ. You're going to have to figure out how much of each cheese works for your sandwich. It's going to depend on the cheeses, their fat content, their moisture content, their age. You don't have to be super precise or exact. I'm not. Set your pan or griddle medium heat, 5 minutes, let it come up to temperature. Here's a sped up view of my cheese grilling process. Drop your assembled sandwich on the preheated cast iron. Weight it down lightly to ensure good contact with the metal. Drop the heat from medium to medium-low. The first sear is about 2 minutes. This starts building the brown crust we're looking for. Flip your sandwich to the uncooked side and weight it down again. Admire your handiwork with such a beautiful beginning to a deeply browned crust. After 1 minute, remove the weight and cover the sandwich with a bowl. Don't flip it though. You're still getting that initial sear going. From here on out, you want to uncover the sandwich, flip it, then cover it again every 60 seconds or so. Flipping often will keep it from burning by giving each side a chance to cool off from direct heat. This is what makes the very crunchy, very thin crust with a soft, pillowy bread inside. The reason we let it go for so long is to give the cheese time to fully melt. This gives us the ooey gooey, stretching, pulling cheese we want. While I have another sandwich going, we're going to go ahead and taste this one. Oh yeah. Look at that. Ooey gooey. It's got that cheese pull. Oozing right out. Crunchy, buttery, melty, delicious goodness. You hear that crunch, that big, noisy crunch. I love it. It needs to talk to me when I eat it. It needs to get up there and just be like, crunch. So this was the cheddar and Monterey Jack. Still nice and hot. Thin, crispy edge with that tender bread inside. Gruyere and Munster is super creamy. That's really good. The Gruyere melts pretty well, so I could probably use a little bit more of that in the ratio. Very nice though. So there you go. There's your guide for how to make your perfect grilled cheese. One that has a crispy, crunchy, well-browned outer crust that isn't burned, a layer of tender, moist, tuggable bread, gooey, melty, stretchable cheese, and big flavor. Perfect grilled cheese. Stick around next week. I am going to make the classic accompaniment for grilled cheese, tomato soup. As always, please like and subscribe. It really helps me out as a content creator. I finally got my EIN for the company, so I can open up a bank account, which means I can go ahead with starting Patreon. That will get fired up ASAP. This week's shout out goes to Wisconsin. It's my home state. I grew up there, and it really instilled in me a lifelong love of cheese. So this episode is dedicated to my home state of Wisconsin. Cheers.